Good morning, YouTubers. It's Saturday, April 28th, 2018. Still in Blue Jay. Probably going to be here for maybe up to a couple more weeks. I think, you know, if I get to that point, I think I'm probably just going to finish on the road. So shifting gears a little bit, still got the doors to do. I've got some things I'll show you that I did a little bit differently in terms of at least finding where the framework is inside the plywood, so that I don't, like, you know, cut in the wrong area and that kind of thing. But I'm shifting towards the pod 2. So right now I'm working on the legs and getting that done. So today's projects are pod 2, whatever I can get done on that with the wood that I have, and the door project, getting those things hinged and looking for some sort of mechanism to hold them in place while I travel, that kind of thing. Right now I've just got a screw in it to hold the door up. It's pretty cheesy, but I got tired of banging into the door. So, okay, so let's get started, and I'll try and keep you looking at the details. Okay, here's where we left off the other day. It's putting these hinges on. And it's important, you know, one of the things that I was about to tell you was it's important to keep this flange plane flat. So what I did was I got this piece of wood and put it up against here, and then pushed the hinge all the way up against it to ensure that I was on the proper plane. If you don't do it right, it won't swing properly. And then I got a pin out and I marked the holes, and then I've already drilled them. So I'm going to use lag bolts with, guess what? Gorilla Glue. Just put a drop in each one. It, you know, penetrates into the wood, and it just makes this wood a little bit harder and more secure. There's not a lot of force that's on these, because all of the force is going to be at this point. It's mainly just to hold this leg up against the pod for travel. So not a whole lot of stress or force on that. The other thing that I did was I used this block. So here's my drill. And that's too long. It'll go through all the way through the plywood, or the 2x4, and I didn't want to do that. So I set as deep as I could the drill into the chuck, and then this allows me to only go down to this depth, which is just short of going through the other side. So a couple of handy little tools. Okay, so I'm going to get this bolted up, and then we'll look at it again. It's important to do this pre-drill step here, because if you'll notice, this is really close to the edge of this 2x4. And when you drive a screw in here without a pilot hole, it creates quite a bit of force, and what you're going to end up doing is splitting this wood. So this would probably have a crack in it if I just tried to drive those bolts in straight. So pre-drilling is a good thing to do. And then the Gorilla Glue that I drop into these will kind of fill the voids and harden the wood around it and make it a really solid connection. I actually tried to remove a bolt the other day from one that I've glued in there, and they're tough to get out. In fact, I actually broke a bolt off. So keep that in mind if this is something that you think that you might need to take apart in the future. This Gorilla Glue holds really well. I'll give that a second to kind of run down into the hole, and then I'll drive the bolts in. Okay, so a little drop of Gorilla Glue in the hole, and get it started a little bit by hand. I have a magnet in my driver. I really don't need to do that, but it's hard to hold the camera. And I'm going to bring this up close and just stop there until I get the other bolt in. That way I still have some adjustment in this hole in case of misalignments or whatever. Get that one started. Okay, let's check square. Not exactly empirical precision, but looks good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cinch these down. Okay, here's a look at what we're reconstructing on the other side. Got about a 1-inch gap here, and about 3 inches from the end of the pod up here, and you'll note that these swing up against the pod for travel. And then I'm probably going to put some eye bolts on either side and use some paracord to just tie this down so that it doesn't swing and bang while we're traveling. I actually went down the mountain without even tying them down, and they were fine. They, you know, they did this a little bit, but it wasn't bad. So I've set the leg in 3 inches from the end of the pod and 1 inch in. So now what I'm going to do is fold this up against here and mark it, and then drill the holes from this direction up. I'm not going to be bolting these legs up with the lag bolts that I used to put them onto the legs themselves. I'm going to use these 1/4 20 machine bolts and some nylon locking nuts with fender washers to put these in. So I've changed my drill. This is a 1/4 inch, larger than a 1/4 inch. I think it's 5/16, but it's big enough to let this 1/4 inch bolt go through the hole that I'm going to drill with this, and then I'll put the nuts on the inside. I don't know if you can see this on the video, but there's 3 holes marked up here somewhere. Then that's where I'm going to drill. Look at that sky. Isn't that sky gorgeous? And just to snug, not to the point of actually deforming this plywood, because this is soft material, it'll compress over time. These may need retightening somewhere down the road. Okay, so both pod legs are now in place. And maybe you remember my talk on one of the other videos. See how this leg is angled? I'm kind of going back and forth about this whole angled leg kind of thing. I mean, from an engineering standpoint, having the force go straight down is stronger. But these have been, I mean, this is pretty rock solid. It's not going anywhere. And the advantage that I have is that I can put my leg under here and I can lift this up and set it. So I can drop this up and down until I get to square or level, and then let the leg down. And it'll hold it there. Solid. I mean, I've crawled up on that, so. Okay, moving on. Okay, so I've got the pod square to the trailer. It's not level to the ground, I don't care about that. But I care square to the trailer, and then the goal is to level the trailer. And that's where I've got this leg set. I'm on a stump down there, I don't know if you can see it. And then the other leg, I'm on a little bit of a slope here, so I've had to kind of actually shim it up a little bit to get it level, but this is all square now, so I'm going to go cut the side. The length of the pod from the wall of the trailer to the end of the pod is 46 3/8 inches. And I've scribed a line all along this board, so I'm going to trim this 4x8 sheet of plywood, 1/2 inch plywood, CDX, down to 46 3/8 inches. Hey, what's up?
I want 2 of them things you made for dinner.
You want 2 of them things that I made for dinner? I've got probably enough for you. There is enough for 2. You want right this second?
10 minutes ago.
Let's go. Let me rip this and I'll come in and make you some. You like that stuff, huh? I'll have to give Sherry the recipe.
Okay, that was noisy, huh? Okay, I'm gonna go make lunch for my dad. Be back in a bit.
Thought y'all needed something pleasant after that tooth grating noise we just had to listen to. Okay, so we've cut the width of this plywood to the base dimensions. Here's what we're aiming for. We're reproducing one of these sides. Kind of hard to tell in the video, but the top all along here is slanted. These are vertical and this is square. So this, and this are at 90 degrees. This one is slanted. It's about 45 and something here to about 36 on the money to right here. And that's to keep rain sloping, running down this way. And then of course the other one mirrors that on the other end. So now what we're going to do is we've got this base cut, this base width. Now I'm going to find out how long this leg is and how long this leg is, and then cut this angle into my sheet parallel-ish to this base. So I measured from our base cut down here, 36 on this side, so this is 36 inches to the edge of this board right here. And then on the other side, it's 42.5 inches. And I've clamped this straight edge in place because I want to make a precision line across here. It's pretty important that this be pretty close. I mean, I want a little bit of wiggle room, but not too much. So I'm going to get a line here and then we'll cut this piece off. I've got my line all the way across. And I'm going to run this saw all the way across that line. Well, the important thing to know is that there's wood under here. And I want to be clear of it. So I've got my line, which is right here, well past where these boards are going to be. I have a hard enough time keeping myself in wood, so I want to be past it so I don't ruin any wood that I've got under here on these sawhorses. Rachel came out and helped me cut this. She held up the wood while we cut this angle. So now I'm getting ready. We've got a wall panel made. So now what I need to do is reinforce it with some framework. So this is the wood I'm getting low on. I've got this piece and then another 8 foot in this pile here. So I'll be able to get maybe 2 or possibly 3 sides of this done today and get it clamped and glued and screwed, the ever popular Gorilla Glue. I ought to start getting royalties from Gorilla Glue for pitching their product. It is a good product, I have to say. So I've got my drill to drive the screws, my drills and screw driving bits, clamps, because I'm going to glue this, clamp it into place, and then flip this all over and then drill it from the other side. Okay, so here's the line for my cut. I thought, as I was about to cut this, I thought maybe you'd find this interesting. And you know, I assume that people know stuff that I do, and you may not. You'll notice that there's some notches on my saw here for a guide. When I press this little button, I don't know if you can see that little laser light that comes across. That laser light is the right side of my blade. That little notch is the width of the blade, so the edge along the left of that notch, where this little red light is pointing, is the left side of my blade. And what I want to do is cut so that the left side of my blade goes right along this line. That cuts to the exact dimension that I've measured for this board. Something you always wanted to know. I knew it. I knew it. Okay, I've got the board cut, and it's actually a perfect cut. I mean, if we feel along here, there's absolutely no overhang on either side. It's exactly the same width as the length of this plywood here, which is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to flip the board over and glue it, and then clamp it into place, and flip this over, and then we'll drive the screws from the other side.
Okay, so you saw me clamp this on the end and then in the middle and then on the far end. The reason that I did that is that every board has a little bit of a curve to it. This one was actually pretty straight. But by doing it this way, so I clamped this end, this is right on the money there. I clamped it. Got down to here and it was off by a little bit, so I pushed it up to make it even and clamped it in place. Well, then it was way off down here. Well, the nice thing about wood is it's flexible, so I was able to just bend it slightly. It wasn't much, 1/16 of an inch maybe, and then clamp that in place. So now this is going to be a perfectly straight piece of wood on this board, and I'm going to reap the benefits of a straighter piece of wood when I'm done. I've got the wall flipped over now. I added a couple of more clamps just to be safe. I'm not going to need to pilot these. Plywood, if the term is correct, is a biased grain, a biased ply, almost like your tires. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember biased ply tires, or do they still make them? I don't know. Anyway, point being is that you got grain that's running this way. The next layer of the plywood, the grain typically is running this way, and then the next layer this way, and then the next layer this way. So it alternates. So plywood is a little more resistant to splitting. The other thing is that I'm going to be using these are drywall screws. If I can get one out. They're extremely sharp. I don't know if you can see the point on that. And they have a really thin shaft, so there's not going to be a whole lot of wood displaced by this screw. So I've been successful in running screws through here without having to pilot it. And that saves me a bunch of time. I mean, having to pilot drill holes when I'm screwing just takes a ton of time, and having to countersink. These are designed, they've got something called a trumpet head, so they actually kind of force the wood out of the way when they get close, and they countersink themselves if the wood is soft enough to allow you to do that, which this is. I've done this repeatedly. So all right, let me get this set up and we'll start putting some screws in. I like to just dump them out because it makes it easier than getting them out of the box one at a time. Find a good nib here. These are PH2s, Phillip head 2 nibs for these particular screws. I like to hold them there as I find a good spot, and I kind of look for the end of the 2x2. Sometimes you'll have to reach under and feel. This looks like a good place, so oops, don't do that. Okay, that one's going in really stiff, so what I'm going to do is back it out a little bit. I'm going to run at it again full bore. Yeah, one more time. Okay, so it must be a knot or something underneath in that wood. That's plenty flat for our purposes. Again, and the camera's on. Ignore this. Man, this is some hard wood. Okay, so I won't make you watch the rest of these. I'm going to run down the rest of the board and then we'll come back in a minute. Okay, so I've gotten all of the screws in along this length here. Wouldn't you note, as soon as I turned off the camera, then the screws went in just fine, like they're usually supposed to. So I'm going to go ahead and take these clamps off and then cut a piece for, I think we're going to do this end down here next, if I've got enough wood. So the other side that I'm about to cut is not square, it has this angle. And keeping a precision cut is a little more challenging. I've relocated where I'm going to cut this wood to this radial arm saw, which has the ability to cut some very precise angles. So I'm going to cut this angle. I've already marked where I need to cut it, but I'm going to cut it here on the circular saw, or on the radial arm saw, instead of with my handheld circular saw like we did. So be right back. Okay, so I've finished making these angled cuts on the radial arm saw. You can see it. I mean, it's got a much nicer finish, and I mean that's a perfect cut. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this up and screw it down. Now, be sure to keep an eye on this angle, because now this piece, unlike the bottom one where I could have rotated it to any side and glued it, it'd have been fine because they were square cuts. These are angled cuts. So it's going to be oriented specifically to this angle on this corner. So be sure that you're gluing the right side, and it's going to be laying flat and along this angle here. And the only reason that I know that is because I've done it. So anyway, heads up. Nothing I hate worse than a dough moment. Okay, so we'll get this one clamped down like we did the other side. I like to put my finger here and I just kind of feel for a smooth alignment there. Look along the length here so that I can see that I'm along the edge, or at least as close as I can get to it with my free hand floating out here. And then once I've got it close, just kind of squeeze it down to get the glue to flow a little bit, and then put a clamp on it. Put it loose at first, and then kind of make whatever readjustments you've got to make. For me, the sense of feel, I can feel that there's no edge right here, so that's perfect. And it looks like I'm pretty straight along this edge here, so I'll go ahead and get another clamp. Working my way down again to compensate for warpage in the wood. Okay, so we're lined up here along the middle, looks good. And I'm not clamping these hard yet, I'm just kind of getting them good and snug so things won't move around on me. Okay, I've got a little float here, so I'm going to go ahead and push this one in a little bit. It's only about a 1/16 of an inch, but I don't want this part to move. So I'm going to go ahead and put these down real good. And now I can bend this piece into parallel. Only about a 1/16 of an inch, right about there. Looks good. Okay, got her all clamped up, so I'll flip it over and we'll drive some screws. Just a quick note, I wanted to show you the Gorilla Glue as it's expanding from underneath this joint. I haven't moistened any of this wood. If you read the back of the label, it tells you to keep a spray bottle if there's not enough moisture in the wood to spray water on the wood surfaces, which is kind of counterintuitive for doing adhesives and that kind of stuff. But Gorilla Glue it reacts with water to create this expansion. So this I've not added water to. This is all just ambient humidity that's driving this reaction, and you can see that the Gorilla Glue is expanding just fine.
Starting with rule number 1, don't mess with the IRS. They are cracking down this year by sending out heart-stopping letters, actively garnishing paychecks, levying bank accounts, and putting on homes and businesses. That's all true, but it's also true there's a way out. It's called the Fresh Start Initiative, an important program for tax debt assistance. It's one of the biggest breaks the IRS has ever offered, so now's the time. You could qualify for a tax settlement that saves you thousands, even tens of thousands. Nobody knows this. The award-winning experts at Optima Tax Relief. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and will work the best deal possible. Don't mess with the IRS. For tax help you need, for tax help you can trust. For a free consultation, call 800-375-2922. 800-375-2922. 800-375-2922. Optima Tax Relief. Restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com. Hey, Los Angeles, save big on floors for every room at Lumber Liquidators.
But that pass, who was such a matriarch for a great family. Politics aside, forget about politics. She was a great lady, and she's going to be missed.
Part of the purpose of this Gorilla Glue in my application is that it's going to be a water barrier. I chose Gorilla Glue in part because it is waterproof. The other part is that it expands, so it'll expand to fill all of the voids, but you want to be sure not to have any gaps in this bead when you put it in. Otherwise that's a potential leak, so that's my goal here. I'm also going to glue these ends here because they're going to have a surface to to butt up against here, and that'll make this part watertight as well. So, you know, everybody's prone to mistakes, myself included. So you'll notice that when I cut this, I actually cut it a little bit too short. Easy fix for that is there's Gorilla Glue in here. I'm going to put a little more on this little sliver of wood that I've cut. So I just took a 2x2 and sliced off a little thin piece using the radial arm saw. That's how precise this saw is. I really like it. So I'm going to put a little bit of Gorilla Glue on here and just put it down in this slot here. And that'll fill it in. That'll work great. Pod 2, wall 1. Done. Well, I'm almost done. Got to put the water flange on the outside. I'm coming up with all kinds of terms. I make up stuff all the time. Look at that sky. Okay, so I think that's all I've got wood for pod walls today. I've got plywood, but I don't have any 2x2, so I've got to go pick some up. But see what my energy level's like here in a bit, and maybe we'll go in and try to work on some shelf doors. So see you in a bit. Okay, YouTubers. So it's about it's a little after 1, I think, and I've opted to kind of give up for the rest of the day. I mean, I'm retired after all. I got one wall done. You know, that's pretty good progress. I didn't think I was going to have enough wood to do that, and I did, so I'm pretty happy about that. Not much else done, I don't think. Oh, I looked at my dad had some devices to kind of secure cabinets closed, and I looked at a couple of those, and he's got a couple that are kind of cool. There's one that, like, you push it in and it pops out, and you push it in and it locks in, and so it's kind of a cool little device, but he's only got like 2 of them, and I need, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 50, I need 20. So I'm going to look for something else. I may even go as simple as putting a couple of eye hooks and some bungee cord, paracord or something to hold them up while I'm traveling. And it'll be kludgy, but you know, it's not going to be permanent. You know, I think we've already talked about the idea of, you know, doing this on the road, and there's no reason why I can't do this on the road. In fact, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I mean, the freedom of being able to do it with electricity that I make from the sun, and you know, not have to worry about taking up somebody's space or anything like that. And it'll give me something to do. You know, I may be challenged for entertainment, and you know, this will keep me busy, so that'll be good. Seems like there was something else I wanted to do or say in closing today. Well, if I did, it's gone now. So anyway, gonna wrap up. Hope that you found something of use in the content that I put together for you today. These videos take significantly longer to do. I mean, there's the part that you see, you know, turning the camera on and off and setting things up and trying to keep some semblance of flow going about, you know, the project without confusing you entirely. So, I mean, there is that part of it that kind of contributes a little bit to the time element, but also the software that I'm using is an open source. Alex, open source. And I like open source stuff. I'm kind of about that community, and I mean, it kind of fits in with the whole nomadic narrative and philosophy, lifestyle, the idea of contributing to the village overall instead of to yourself. I mean, these are all things that I believe in and support. So I have an open source video editor, and as is typical of some open source video editors, it's not perfect. So as I build segments, it takes longer for that processing to occur, and it just takes a lot longer to get a video processed. I think I finally pulled the trigger on uploading yesterday's about 7 o'clock, I want to say, 7 o'clock in the evening. And I'm usually crawling into bed at 7:38. I mean, I'm early to bed, early to rise usually. You know, I kind of linger a little bit and read and, you know, play Skyrim before drifting off to sleep around 9:30, 10 o'clock at the latest. By 10 o'clock, I'm lights out. I'm liking my beard, but I always feel like it's in the way, and I'm always trying to brush it out. But I'm starting to look pretty scruffy, I think. Mountain Man. What was that guy that was on TV years ago? Grizzly Adams. Can I say that without copyright infringement? Was it Grizzly Adams? Yeah, I think so. But anyway. I think that's it. You know, I appreciate all of the comments that everybody left yesterday. That was really great, especially on such a long video. You guys watched it, and you were commenting on stuff that was like near the end. So to me, that says that you actually, you know, hunkered down and forced yourself through the whole thing. That's pretty impressive. So kudos to you. Thank you so much for, you know, liking my content enough to watch the whole thing and to comment on it. I got your reply, TMT, on the monetization. 1,000 subscribers. Wow. Yeah. That's so I don't have to worry about that for a while. I mean, if my curve continues as it is, you know, maybe never. So anyway, questions, comments, rejoinders, you know, flipping me the bird, all of that still stands. All of your ideas, whether I use them or not, you know, like I've said before, you know, a lot of times things that you think are silly or not useful or that I would never use in a million years, they trigger other lines of thought. And, you know, inspiration comes from data, you know. So the more data I get, the more likely I am to bump into some inspiration that would come in handy right now. So, all right, I think I'll quit yakking for the day and let you guys get on about your business. And I have no idea how many video segments I took today, so I'll try and get this up as soon as possible. Usually it takes probably a good 3-4 hours from start to finish. Once I sit down and I start, you know, downloading the file, stringing them all together, creating a project, and processing the project, and changing things, and getting it uploaded onto YouTube. It's a pretty long process. It takes a little bit of doing. So, I'm glad that you guys appreciate the effort. And we'll see you tomorrow. So later.